I would like to welcome you back to another sponsorship video for the 12 Steps of Narcotics Anonymous. I asked viewers' opinions on which direction to take and was told that they wanted to hear my personal thoughts with the first step questions from this guide. Now, I need to admit that this seemed like an almost impossible task because trying to share what I'm about to admit about my beliefs is terrifying, and it's going to be difficult for me to put all this together to make sense. But I'm just going to have courage and continue to honestly tell you about my experience with the 12 steps and how they are my solution for giving up bad habits, addictions, and self-destruction. Before we begin that, I want to challenge anyone listening to make a firm decision to work the steps along with me. You will need to get your own copy of the Narcotics Anonymous Step Working Guide questions. Please do not worry about what others think of you attempting to do this because, for me, it was something I let everyone around me see as a part of my life. I had become a man determined to understand why I was a drug addict, how I could have lost my children and my freedom, and I was proud of the effort I was putting in to learning how to overcome it. Do not be ashamed of being an addict. Shame only comes from hiding our problems and not trying to do something about it. Okay, as soon as I dug into this large amount of writing, I found out that when I finally surrendered to the idea of recovery, that I'd actually started with a fourth step on July 24th, 2013, and that I didn't begin to formally write the answers to the first step until March 14th, 2017, so almost 4 years later. From all my years of drug addiction, treatment centers, going to meetings, and earlier attempts at working the steps, sitting in prison for 5 years must have made the first 3 steps seem unnecessary at the time because I had already worked these steps several times in my life. Please hear me when I say this. An honest and dedicated effort at understanding and working the first 3 steps will bring about an incredible, almost miraculous change in anyone's life, which is why most addicts usually stop right there. We will start to get our lives back together. We may get our family's trust back. We get some health back. We may start to look a little better. And we may even get a really good job. And all this seems like success, and it is. But that's only a temporary solution because the remaining steps are the crucial part for long-term successful recovery from addiction. The problem is that the remaining 9 steps are where the most difficult work must be done. In 2013, I realized I'd never completed all 12 steps because I was always one of those addicts that stopped in my recovery once everything got a little better. So at the time, I already understood how to work the first 3 steps on the drugs in my life. So I started on the 4th step, which has the reputation of being the hardest thing in the world to do. After that, I finished the rest of the 12 steps, then I backtracked, work the first 3 steps again, and I'll share my thoughts on that with you all now. These are all my answers from the Step Working Guide of NA and everything I wrote to myself. It's all dated, I numbered the pages, and I kept up with how long it took me to complete each step. Ironically, like a college degree, it took me almost exactly 4 years to complete them. For a reference, it took me 11 and a half months to complete a very difficult 134-page 4th step. So I probably struggled a little, but it only took me about 2 months to complete the first 3 steps in about 126 pages. So if anyone is willing to get serious with their recovery, this work will go quickly when we dedicate some real quality time to it. As I said before in the earlier video, losing everything in my life and sitting in prison for 13 years made my own surrender and the acceptance that I needed help much easier for me to see. Even today, all around me in the free world, I see people just about every day that I know need recovery in their lives from something. But freedom and the choices that freedom brings seems to make it nearly impossible for them to seek it. If you are watching this from inside a prison, you are blessed to have the uninterrupted time you have right now that could save your life. I tell people now all the time that I wouldn't trade my prison sentence for anything in the world, and I'll share more about that now and then to explain that. In 2017, I wrote these words to myself. I sit down here and I formally write these first 3 steps because I need to understand them as a solution to the disease in all other areas of my life, besides the drugs. I have not used drugs for a few years now, so I do not necessarily concentrate on that aspect this time through the steps. What I want to do is surrender all the rest of my life to the solution I believe will bring me recovery from the disease of addiction. And then, just like with every other step, I write out each question and I begin the process of learning the definitions of each difficult word. I wrote the meanings down, and if there were any words contained in the definitions I didn't know, I looked them up too. Then I wrote this. I just spent over 20 minutes in a search of words and definitions to help me recognize my complete understanding of this disease. It's a sickness, a condition of ill health, where a disordered state, a disturbance of the mind, body, or spirit, where a person has devoted or given oneself to acting in certain ways by habit, is causing obsession and compulsion in obvious and painful ways. There is excessive preoccupation with ideas or attitudes of mind, opinions, thoughts, or beliefs, or even delusions or the false mental conceptions of reality as it relates to oneself that stimulates the mind to action, and it culminates in a compulsion to act in ways in which a subject is not fully aware. This is a lot to take in, especially if an addict at first believes the drugs are the only problem. I am starting to completely realize that the drugs are only a symptom of my troubles. The disease of addiction is embedded deeply in the mind, body, and spirit, and it needs to be treated as the sickness that it is. Here's where the simplicity of what treatment really is becomes simple. Just by going inside our minds and our spirit with the questions contained in each step, and then seeking to understand the answers, and we write down, we will find relief from everything from our past and find recovery. It's difficult, but it's not complicated. We ask ourselves some difficult questions. We learn what the difficult words mean. We tell ourselves the answers, and we will understand how to heal and become the person we'd rather be. It really is that simple. So essentially, all these questions ahead of us are the path for treatment for the disease of addiction. And again, treatment being the process where we learn to apply methods of relief and cures as a remedy to an illness. This is the way I healed from the disease of addiction. It's how I found relief from my bad habits and from my self-destruction. As we continue through the steps, I don't think it's possible for us to look at every single question together. My answers will not necessarily be your answers, and there are over 100 questions alone just in this first step, so it could literally take days. The first step is divided into 9 sections. We've begun by talking about the disease of addiction, and every person should spend as much time as possible answering these questions to get a full understanding of what you are up against, because it will kill us if left untreated. After this, I wrote, having reread the above entry, I am pleased with my attempts to really understand what I am up against. The disease of addiction is possibly one of the most harmful and dangerous illnesses of all time, as it is one that can often seem invisible, and it can kill without warning, and it also harms those that we come in contact with, but not always a physical sense, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, which is more difficult to heal. I believe part of my motivation to understand how to overcome my addiction was because of my children and my family, and my desire to never ever harm them again. Whatever our motivation here, just as long as it keeps us moving forward. The second section in this step is closely related because as addicts, we are especially troubled by denial, which is the part of the disease that tells us we don't really have a disease. In the guide, it says, when we are in denial, we are unable to see the reality of our addiction. We minimize its effect. We blame others, citing the too high expectations of families, friends, employers. We compare ourselves with other addicts whose addiction seems worse than our own. We may even blame one particular drug. Here again, we need to take a little time to fully understand these questions and the words we associate with them. One question that stood out to me was, how have I blamed others for my behavior? To be completely honest right here, most of my life before recovery, I've tried to blame my behavior problems on something or someone else or both. Anything besides my troubles being my own fault. My father was an addict. The drug dealers preyed on me so they could make their money. That relationship was driving me nuts. Life is unfair and has caused me all these problems. My friends dragged me down with them. If we try to play the blame game here, we're likely to continue to get the same results we've gotten all our life. Are there any of you listening who want more out of life than what you've been getting? I would assume yes. I've been right there with you. Further in this section, it asks, am I avoiding action because I'm afraid I will be ashamed when I face the results of my addiction? Am I avoiding action because I'm worried about what others will think? Of course, I have answered yes here most of my life, but now I spent some time telling myself the truth about it all. I challenge each and every listener to answer all these questions in writing and tell yourself the truth too. The third section in here is called Hitting Bottom, Despair, and Isolation. And it says, our addiction finally brings us to a place where we can no longer deny the nature of our problems. All the lies, all the rationalizations, all the illusions fall away as we stand face to face with what our lives have become. We realize we've been living without hope. Now we have some serious questions. What crisis brought me to recovery? One of the main reasons I'm trying to make Narcotics Anonymous sponsorship videos available to the prison system can essentially be tied to these few questions right here. I found myself in the worst crisis I'd ever been in almost 15 years ago. I would soon find myself sitting in the same rooms some of you are sitting in right now, just wishing and praying for some kind of hope. I needed so badly for someone to tell me that there was a solution to my crisis, that a 34-year prison sentence wasn't going to be the end of me, that losing my children could somehow be overcome, that the drugs hadn't beaten me, just wishing that someone, somewhere, actually cared if I turned my life around and could help me understand how to do that. I want to be that person. I am a sponsor for the 12 steps. I'm just a person who's been there and done that, someone that has worked the steps and can help others do the same thing. I will also tell you that your current crisis is not the end. There is a solution. The drugs, prison, the pain of losing everything, it can all be overcome. I do care if you turn your life around. I care because I am just like you, and because I want to see other addicts overcome their worst crisis, just like I have. What situation led me to formally work step one? Seriously though, if the current situation of prison doesn't motivate someone to formally work step one and decide to continue on a path of recovery while you have the best opportunity you'll probably ever have, then these videos may not help you. I said earlier I wouldn't trade my prison sentence for anything in the world. Remember that? One reason is this: because prison was a blessing I didn't see for what it was until years later. It gave me all the time in the world to seek recovery. It took me almost 4 years to answer these questions and learn all these words and figure out who I really was and what I really wanted out of life and how I might get there. So if you want recovery too, you'd better get busy with me right now. When did I first recognize my addiction as a problem? Did I try to correct it? If so, how? If not, why not? I went to a treatment center 3 times before prison. If you don't do something about your problems now, then when will you? The next section in this step is called powerlessness. And it says, as addicts, we react to the word powerless in a variety of ways. Some of us recognize that a more accurate description of our situation simply could not exist. And we admit our powerlessness with a sense of relief. Others recoil at the word, connecting connecting it with weakness, or believing it to indicate some kind of character deficiency. Understanding powerlessness and how admitting our own powerlessness is essential to our recovery will help us get over any negative feelings we have about the concept. We may have tried to abstain from drug use or other compulsive behaviors, perhaps with some success for a period of time without a program, only to find that our untreated addiction eventually takes us right back to where we were before. In order to work the first step, we need to prove our own individual powerlessness to ourselves on a deep level. The first question here: over what exactly am I powerless? Now, I really had to spend some time on this topic. Can anyone else relate with not wanting to admit powerless? I mean, it's deeply ingrained in the human spirit to think we have all the power we'll need to live our life by ourselves. But there's actually not a lot in this life that we do have power over. The world continuously moves along and things happen all around us, most of which we have absolutely no control over. We can try to force things to go our way all the time, and sometimes that may actually work, but that doesn't make us powerful. This concept doesn't mean we are weak or that we just give up on life, but rather it's the form of surrender necessary to find true recovery, and honestly, it has taught me how to find some peace I never even knew existed. If you've seen this earlier first step video, then you've heard me explain how I believe it simply means this: I do not have the power all by myself, and I need help. Do any of you feel like you might need some help in areas of your life with something? Admitting powerlessness simply allows us to figure out what help it is we may need, because we'll finally stop trying to do it all on our own. The next section we come to is called unmanageability. And seriously, this section was easy for me to relate to. The first step asks us to admit two things. One, that we are powerless over our addiction, and two, that our lives have become unmanageable. There are two general types of unmanageability: outward unmanageability, the kind that can be seen by others, and inner or personal unmanageability. Outward unmanageability is often identified as such things as arrests, job losses, family problems. Some of our members have been incarcerated. Inner or personal unmanageability is often identified as unhealthy or untrue belief systems about ourselves. We may even believe we're worthless. Emotional volatility, which means that our emotions change rapidly and unpredictably, is often one of the most obvious ways in which we can identify personal unmanageability. Every bit of this describes my problems, especially this thing about emotional volatility. So I spent quite a while answering all these questions to myself. What does unmanageability mean to me? Have I ever been arrested or had legal trouble as a result of my addiction? Have I ever done anything I could have been arrested for if I were only caught? What have those things been? What trouble have I had at work or school because of my addiction? What trouble have I had with family because of my addiction? What trouble have I had with my friends because of my addiction? Do I insist on having my own way? What effect has that had on my relationships? Do I consider the needs of others? What effect has that lack of consideration had on my relationships? Do I accept responsibility for my life and my actions? Am I able to carry out my daily responsibilities without becoming overwhelmed? How has this affected my life? Do I fall apart the minute things don't go according to plan? How has this affected my life? Do I treat every challenge as a personal insult? And how has this affected me? Now, do you understand why I said everyone needs their own copy of this guide? If someone wants their lives to be manageable, then understanding what unmanageable means is absolutely critical. I am so grateful to have found these simple, numbered steps, because they have guided me on a path to realizing what it feels like to have my life become manageable. If we answer these questions honestly in writing, when they are visible on paper, it becomes impossible to ignore unmanageability and it can bring about change like never before possible. The last two questions here are very, very important and will come up numerous times throughout the recovery process. Do I have temper tantrums or react to my feelings in other ways that lower my self-respect or sense of dignity? And describe. Do I take drugs or act out on my addiction to change or suppress my feelings? What was I trying to change or suppress? And then I wrote this to myself. So here is why I like these questions. When would I have ever considered the way my negative reactions affect the way I feel about myself? And what does dignity and self-respect even mean? Dignity means worthiness, deserving respect, showing kind and thoughtful or considerate treatment towards myself. Self-respect meaning appropriate sense of one's own worth, to be proud of oneself, to be satisfied or pleased with self. I need this lesson so simply learned with a dictionary. It makes sense for me now to see that there are surely reasons why I have self-destructed through the years. Many do to this very reason. The violations I did to the parts of my heart and soul where I force a sort of hatred into my life. Repeated instances of lowering my worthiness, the loss of the ability to show kind and considerate behavior towards myself. The many ways I have lost the ability to care so much that I decide I might as well get high because the pain tortures me every day. All because I do not focus on the way I treat others. It's a sort of a mystery, but then again, it's not. I can't like me if I don't like others. Did I take drugs or act out on my addiction to change or suppress my feelings? See how all this works? I just told myself some of these answers. When I damage my dignity and my self-respect, I will eventually hate myself enough to take drugs or act out on my addiction to help change the way I am feeling. And feelings are just a natural part of the human existence and are some healthy coping skills and mature, responsible, calm acceptance of letting these feelings make us better men are what I am sitting here trying to learn. I didn't even know what self-respect and dignity meant. Do any of you know any of this about yourselves? I really hope you take some time to learn right here. The next section is reservations. I looked up some definitions here. Reservations means we have doubts or concerns or are not fully convinced recovery is a good idea or right for us or that we agree with it completely, often holding back full acceptance. In simpler terms, it says we're unsure. We have worries and are not totally on board. We're not ready to fully commit. Even further, it also means reservations are places in our program that we have reserved for relapse. They may be built around the idea that we can retain a small measure of control. Something like, okay, I accept that I can't control my using, but I can still sell drugs, can I? Or we may think we can remain friends with the people we used to use with or bought drugs from. We may think that certain parts of the program don't apply to us. We may think there's something we just can't face clean, a serious illness, for instance, and plan to use if that ever happens. We may think that after we've accomplished some goal or made a certain amount of money or been clean for a certain number of years, then we'll be able to control our using. Reservations are usually tucked away in the back of our minds, and we are not fully conscious of them. It is essential that we expose any reservations we may have and cancel them right here, right now. Have I accepted the full measure of my disease? Do I think I can still associate with the people connected with my addiction? What reservations am I still holding on to? These are just a few of the questions, and they are all unique to the individual, so please don't skip them. Surrender is the next topic of questions for step 1. And it says here, there's a huge difference between resignation and surrender. Resignation is what we feel when we've realized we're addicts, but haven't yet accepted recovery as the solution to our problem. Many of us found ourselves at this point long before coming to Narcotics Anonymous. We may have thought that it was our destiny to be addicts, to live and die in our addiction. Surrender, on the other hand, is what happens when we've accepted the first step as something that is true for us and have accepted that recovery is the solution. We don't want our lives to be the way they have been. We don't want to keep feeling the way we've been feeling. Again, this was a pretty simple thing for me. If you are watching this from inside a prison, I wished I could ask each of you personally, are you tired of the way your life has been going? Are you tired of the way you've been feeling? About 15 years ago, my life was an absolute mess. Seriously. I might have even been sitting in the same room you're watching this video from right now. I reached a level of surrender that made me ready to try anything to get and feel better. I could not understand how, but if these answers to these questions could somehow bring me some relief, I was ready to try. Are any of you ready to try something different in your life yet? One of the questions here says, what would my life be like if I surrendered completely? Let me tell you something. My life has become something today I never imagined possible. Now, I know we're just getting started and we have a long way to go, but I have some surprising things to share pretty soon. So I hope you keep going along with me. There are 6 questions contained here, so please spend some time on them when you get there. Now we come to a long section called spiritual principles. In the first step, we will focus on honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, humility, and acceptance. The practice of the principle of honesty from the first step starts with admitting the truth about our addiction and continues with the practice of honesty on a daily basis. When I say I'm an addict in a meeting, it may be the first truly honest thing I've said in a long time. We begin to be able to be honest with ourselves and consequently with other people. There are about 22 questions contained here. The first one says, if we've been thinking about using drugs or acting out on our addiction in some other way, have I shared it with my sponsor or told anyone else? If I were your sponsor, I would tell you this, that I'm not sure that I'd ever thought about learning what spiritual principles are in my entire life until I began this recovery process. A definition of spiritual that I like says, relating to or affecting the human spirit or soul as opposed to material or physical things. I believe I've been a man that has mostly focused on the material things in life, never really considering my spirit or soul or much of anything else but physical pleasure or fun or thinking that possessions or belongings is what would make me happy. A definition of principles for me is personal beliefs that influence my conduct or behavior, not just right and wrong, but also the truths and the reasons about how I think life should be as it concerns me. Now, I know this is some big boy stuff. I mean, this is where we either decide to grow up and learn some new things, or we just keep going along in life with only the answers we've always had. If any of you listening are completely happy with your life and you think you have all the answers you'll need to get wherever it is you think you need to get in life to be happy and at peace in this world, well, I would be amazed, because I personally believe that this is an ongoing thing. I mean, what may be the happiest 5 years ago when I left prison has changed some. So I am still making sure the answers I believe about spiritual principles are current and what I need in my life today. Does that make sense? Our recovery is forever, and life changes, as I said before. One of the secrets I've learned about life is just keep on learning, period. Practicing the principle of open-mindedness, found in step 1, mostly involves being ready to believe that there might be another way to live and being willing to try that way. It doesn't matter that we can't see every detail of what that way might be, or that it may be totally unlike anything we'd heard about before. What matters is that we don't limit ourselves or our thinking. Here again, open-mindedness may prove to be the greatest tool anyone has for becoming the person they truly want to be. Most of my adult life, I've made myself believe that I have all the answers I need. And when we think we always have all the answers, why would our minds be open to different answers? When I don't like the way I'm feeling today or the way my life is going, I stop for a minute and I think, am I stuck in some of my old answers? Are there some new answers I may need right now? What have I heard in recovery that I have trouble believing? Have I asked my sponsor or the person I heard say it to explain it to me? In what ways am I practicing open-mindedness? If you are sitting there listening to me right now, it's pretty safe to say you're practicing some open-mindedness. Not sure how many are attending this meeting, but I can only imagine it's a very small percentage compared to those who are not. So, you are on the right path. The principle of willingness contained in the first step can be practiced in a variety of ways. When we first begin to think about recovery, many of us either don't really believe it's possible for us or just don't understand how it will work. But we go ahead with the first step anyway. And that's our first experience with willingness. Taking any action that will help our recovery shows willingness. Am I willing to follow my sponsor's direction? Am I willing to go to meetings regularly? Am I willing to give recovery my best effort, and in what ways? Did you notice that made 3 times that a sponsor is mentioned under spiritual principles? As this video series moves forward, we'll talk about how asking a sponsor questions can be done. As this is the only first step, we're hoping that everyone involved can reach a level of surrender here without very many questions. Prison is a lesson not many people get to experience, but I will say it again. It may be the thing that saves your life and give you a new life just like it did me. The acceptance section says, to practice the principle of acceptance, we must do more than merely admit that we're addicts. When we accept our addiction, we feel a profound inner change that is underscored by a rising sense of hope. We also begin to feel a sense of peace. We come to terms with our addiction, with our recovery, and with the meaning those two realities will come to have in our lives. We don't dread a future of meeting attendance, sponsor contact, and step work. Instead, we begin to see recovery as a precious gift, and the work connected with it is no more trouble than other routines of life. About 2 weeks ago, on New Year's Day, I celebrated almost 15 years with no alcohol. I celebrated over 13 years since I've used any tobacco. And it made 12 years exactly since I've used any drugs. On January the 2nd, I turned 56 years old, and I may be in the best health of my entire life. On January the 12th, 2026, that made exactly 18 years ago that I crashed that van into 2 parked police cars and broke a Kentucky State Trooper's leg. I can promise you this right now. If I can find recovery, anyone can. Miracles have happened to me because of this program. I haven't even begun to tell you about some of them, but I will very soon. What is my understanding of step 1? If you watched the earlier first step video, you know how I learned to work this step by understanding the definitions of the words. I confess it to be true, without reluctance, that I do not have the power all by myself to manage my own life. And whatever the disease of addiction is, it's affecting me by making my life unmanageable. And just maybe, I need some help. We've come to a place where we see the results of our old way of life, and we accept that a new way is called for. But we probably don't yet see how rich with possibilities the life of recovery is. It may be enough just to have freedom from active addiction right now, but we will soon find that the void we have been filling with drugs or other obsessive and compulsive behaviors begs to be filled. Working the rest of the steps will fill that void. Next on our journey towards recovery is step 2. If you want recovery for yourself, now is the time. There are over 100 questions in this first step, and I hope you start today. I'll be working on the second step video now and hope to have it completed in about a month. Thank you all for listening.